start from the Senior Consultant Water Management, the Netherlands, and the Professor of Hans University of Applied Science. Let us all welcome Dr. Floris Boogaard, please.
Yes. Thank you, of course, for receiving us as a Dutch delegation here to talk. I got this microphone so I can move a bit, so I'm not blocking everybody's screen all the time. So first I would like to, thanks again, and maybe take a look at these pictures. I think only a couple of months ago in June, we met with the Cebu delegation, and already here, this is already this week, we had a pressure cooker, so I think it went quite fast what we could do. And I would like to reflect on this week and show you some of the ideas that we have for the future. Okay, but maybe I should introduce, because you heard a lot of different universities be spoken. My university, I'm a professor in Groningen, Hanse University. It's really high in the northeast. I'm also a consultant at TAU, and I'm also a researcher at TU Delft, where I got my PhD on basically environmental engineering. And I'm also a professor at the Applied University of Rotterdam. It has been mentioned. Thank you. And you might ask, why would a person have different positions? Well, that's basically to combine the worlds of entrepreneurship, education, and research. It's what we call the triple helix, and Rick Heikoop will say something more about that later. So, and all these places have actually something in common. If you've been to the Netherlands, you're probably aware of the special water management system that we have. And if all the dikes would break, you will see that I would be out of my 4 jobs. So, you might understand that water is quite important to us. So that's why we're here, to learn from each other. So, just to reflect on things, I would like to say some of the things that we could maybe do in the near future. 2017 to 2020, we had a lot of talks with the different professors on what we could do. And I would like to stress maybe some of the points like mapping, monitoring, reflect on models where we can collaborate on media, social media, and maybe even more. And they all start with an M, so let's call it the 5-step approach, because that sounds maybe very intelligent. So, first of all, maybe stress some of the challenges that we have in the Netherlands. Some of the challenges are, of course, the floodings that we occur in this side, as you can see here in the left front. Also, we have subsidence of the ground, a couple of centimeters a year in some regions in the Netherlands, as in some regions in the Philippines as well. We have water quality issues up here. So I will talk more about that. That was the reason that I'm here. And of course, we have a sea level rise, and we also have heat stress. So there are quite a lot of challenges that we could meet and discuss in this week and the following 3 years. So, and of course, that's not very different from what we have in the world. We have the heat stress, the floodings, the water quality. This is a picture of the Philippines. The heat stress, Philippine temperatures hit to dangerous levels. We also have the droughts, Cebu. A couple of years ago, there was no water anymore, of course, the air quality conditions, and of course, urbanizations, as you can see here in Manila, in this case, that leads to a total different water balance in the urban area. So, and if I'm going to talk about water quality, we have to be honest as well. 50 years ago, this is what our water would look like. The canals in Amsterdam, which you might have seen on pictures or even been there, they were not so nice as they look now. And a lot of things happened, of course, and I think the situation is quite similar with Amsterdam in 1970s and what we've seen the last week. And of course, we had a lot of troubles to get to a water quality that we actually acquire, that we have an ambition to. So, and now, actually, our queen, it says princess, but now she is a queen from Argentina. She swims in the canals in Amsterdam. So that was our ambition, so we came a long way. And it might be interesting to know what we actually have done in these couple of years. And these are all actions that we have performed. You can see we started with a 3-step approach. It's analyzing the situation. We had an ambition and we had an action. And I'm not going to go through all these subjects, but these are all subjects that we maybe could relate to or work on together in the next couple of years. So, and it's mostly about awareness and cleaning up. And I will show you some of these in the next situation. And there's one thing that maybe if we see this list, I don't think we should just drop the list or follow these actions. I think we should learn from our mistakes, because we had some mistakes in the past as well. If you see here, what we've done is we started in 1970s with clean up the rivers. We had new legislation, we had education of the people, we raised awareness, and basically we spent a lot of money. This is the cost on sewer infrastructure, a lot of costly infrastructure to have wastewater treatment systems and everything. So we had a high cost, but there's something happening in 2016. Basically, we realized that maybe nature-based solutions would be better to implement more effective, less required space in the urban dense area. So basically, we came up that the cost would be lower. And actually, if you see this, you might think that people are walking through a park, but actually that's a wastewater treatment system. So those things, and then we realized that in the what we've done in the last years. I would suggest that actually, when we look at the Philippines, that we maybe can have a shortcut. So we could do with less cost, we could get to that point quite easier, spend less time, spend less cost, and require space to get the same result actually. So that might be something that we could work on. So with the whole delegation this week, we actually came up with an approach, because this is not the last time that we're going to be here. We have a program, and of course we have to detail that together. But I think some of the things that are quite fixed. This is the Cebu City Challenge, so that's now in 2017. We already talked about the River Summit, which is in November 2018, so at this site. And actually it would be great to come up with some actions that we could do in between. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So let this be some suggestions that we could do, and in the next presentations, you will see some more about it. And we're going to use the triple helix approach, which Rick will say some more about it. So for now, I would just like to show you some of the things that we have been encountering the last week. And one of the things was mapping and monitoring. And we had on Monday very, very interesting situations or presentations actually on DO levels, TSS and BOD levels, which were quite high in some locations. So we had done some of the measurements as well. Okay, so it starts with analyzing, then have your ambition, and then turn to action. And actually, when I was in the plane from Amsterdam arriving here, you could already see that when the rivers come into the sea, there's a lot of sediment, polluted sediment as well. So that's your first step. You're going to acknowledge that. So, and that's where we took some measurements in this area as well. So what has been done, and if you were here this morning, the young professionals have done a lot of analyzing of the area. Not only DO, TSS, but we focused on nitrate and phosphate, because they're good indicators on domestic waste or industrial waste. And you have to know the levels to know what your ambition is going to be. So it works with an app, iPhone, you can do it yourself with test strips. It's quite accurate since the last test strips to analyze this. And this was really upstream. So we saw both really the more or less clean water, as you can see at this sample, and then going downstream, as you can see here, which was the mouth of the river. And it was quite dirty, it was quite hard to get samples here. So we asked some kids to take the samples. You can see quite a difference here between the two levels, basically. So if you would analyze this, there would be a clean level and there would be a dirty level, and that could be your ambition. So, and we mapped the results as well on a website called climatescan.nl. It's open source, so all the measurements that we took, you can find actually on this website, and it's open source. So that's one of the things that we could do in the next levels. And we also have been experimenting with continuous loggers. That means that every 10 seconds they take a sample, and you can see what kind of change in water quality is taking place. So that's some experience that we did, and it might be nice to do that in the near future as well. Yes. So maybe some results on this water quality. We found some high levels, up to 27 ppm on phosphate and nitrate, which is quite high. It's almost raw sewage water, so to say. So, and that indicates quite a high impact on domestic sewage water and industrial waste. That's not surprisingly because there are no sewage treatment plants here. So that's one of the steps that we could do. There's a high spatial variability in surface water. Mostly you take only one sample, but if you really go into the details of surface water, there's a high variation. In time, even day and night, but also at certain locations. So the advice would be to have more insight on other parameters, so even more than only nitrate and phosphate, to get more continuous monitoring, to know actually where the location is, at what locations, and the goal would be to locate in a very cost-effective manner where the discharges are that affect the surface water most. So not only grab samples, but continuous samples. And of course, this is just some sentences, but it might be nice to get to that, what we actually could do. So what would be one of the proportions would be continuous monitoring, and one of the ways to do that is with continuous sensors, but not on one fixed location, but with underwater drones, for example, or boats. We have been experimenting that. This is in the cityscan Rotterdam. Only 3 weeks ago, we get to the water. We have these underwater drones. You can see one in the water there. And we have cameras on that. We have continuous sensors, and they go into the water, and they basically, because you have the GPS, you know at which locations there will be higher values. And these locations, especially if you spread it out of a whole river system, you can see that some locations are much more polluted than other locations because of discharge here. And if you know that, you can come up with solutions at that particular space. And there are some studies we've done in Indonesia, for example, that were quite effective to locate these sources. So that's one of the things that we could do. So basically how it works, you go into a river like this, and you will see when concentrations go up at a certain locating point, and you would know that these discharges have the most effect on the water, and those are the locations that you have to prioritize and get more solutions for that. So that's something that we could do in the next coming years. And after that, as a strategy, this is an example in India, Ganges. That's one of the most polluted rivers in the world. You could see that actually with these continuous monitoring, you can have industrial zones, domestic zones, and then you can apply different BMPs, best management practices, on these locations to purify it. And that would be great to come up and work to in the next couple of years. So that's one of the things that I've been, about water quality. And some other presentation that we saw on Monday that were quite interesting. Those are the digital elevation models. And the project NOAA is quite far because already we know which locations they are. And one of the things that we could do in the next coming years is actually go a bit step further. Maybe do 3D modeling. You can see here, this is a model of floodings in Norway that we've been working on. It might be a next step and even more detailed with digital elevation models on LiDAR. And maybe not only flooding. In the Netherlands, we have quite some models, for example, on water quality or pollution or even heat stress. And if you run all these models, you will see locations in the urban area that you could prioritize and see if you can come up with measures for that. And there are quite some things. So that's one of the thoughts that we had that we could apply. And just to give you one example what I mean with very detailed modeling, I'm going to show you one of the examples what happened in Moerdijk a couple of years ago. It was an industry that basically blew up. And that looks like this. And because it was a chemical plant, the whole environment in that area was lost. No fish, everything dead. You can imagine that the fire brigade come in, they extinguished the fire and all the water was spread out. But even at a rain event, normal rainwater event, all the pollution would be in the whole area. So what you could do with detailed modeling is not only see where the flooding would be, but also how the water will stream to certain points. These points are really interesting, for example, because you know where the water, the polluted water, will come into the environment. And that's actually some algorithms that have been used, they're open source as well, and we could apply that in this area at certain industries. So it will tell you at what location the water would be polluted. And these locations we can come up with measures and from this detailed monitoring. So that would be something that we could do in the next couple of years as well to ensure the environment and come up with solutions. So, and after that, if you know what kind of locations are quite polluted, we can see if we have sedimentation, filtration, absorption, or phytoremediation as measures to come up with a better water quality. And one of the things we already saw this morning are these floating islands that would indicate with phytoremediation. So the umbrella plant and everything. So that's one of the things that we could try the next couple of years. So one almost last example would be using media. It's something new in Europe that we use social media, which has been used quite a lot in the Philippines as well, and that gives you a lot of data. A data which is participation of people that will provide you actually with free data. So for example, this is the flood model of Amsterdam. That's just calculations that you have to calibrate. You can see in some locations there are floodings, but it's just a model. But how would you know if it's really true? How do you calibrate a model like that? Well, actually, it's quite easy because a lot of you as well use Twitter, and Twitter can indicate what kind of locations they are. So at certain dates, you can see that, for example, these tweets with photos of people floating in the street. This is the rivierenbuurt, the river area, as we say. You see that people are floating, and trams cannot pass at certain points. So you can use that actually as a calibration of the model. That's quite a useful thing, that you have the amount of tweets and a certain accuracy for that to calibrate what you actually have been modeling. So that might be something that we could try here in this region as well. And one other thing is quite simple, to just post things on Facebook. This is one of the pictures that we had taken this week, and you just post it on picture and you say, is there any solutions for the plastic waste? And you get actually a lot of suggestions that are quite helpful. I'm not going to say a lot about it because time is going to use some of these solutions to this. So this is using social media. It's basically very accessible. It's very good to do this with young professionals as well. So it might be something that we could pitch in the next coming years. Well, as the last, what I was thinking more actually, and there's a lot more that we could do, of course, together, but there were a lot of great presentation on Monday on a soccer field that has been used for soccer, of course, but also for floodings or the sand filters. So actually that would be quite nice to, maybe with young professionals, see if we can do one of these BMPs that we have in the Netherlands and try to implement these in these areas and see how they work. And there are 1,001 locations as vegetation strips or swales or permeable pavement to infiltrate more water and to indicate that we have less saltwater intrusion, for example. So that's one of the things that we could do as well. And of course, there are a lot more examples, and we map them, most of them on climate-scan, where you can find the floating islands that we have been built with videos and drawings and everything, plastic waste, for example, and one of the other solutions. So I would invite you to actually go to that www.climatescan.nl and see what we have been doing in the last week. And what we would like to do as well is to use some communication tools, international communication tools. So maybe serious gaming, more augmented reality, the 3D models, or doing what we've done this week, actually with young professionals and making a physical product that we can be proud of and see as the islands, which Bart in the next presentation will tell more about. So that's basically what I would like to fill in this part, in the whole plan. So we can present, we can put papers in, about phytoremediation or all these solutions, and present at the River Summit in November 2018. So take-home messages. I think I've showed that we have a lot of challenges, but we share these challenges. I hope we can share the solutions as well to these problems, and I hope we can have a detailed discussion about this, what you would like from this, because that's something you have to do together. These are just ideas that I have, and there might be a lot of more ideas that we can do, or we can maybe rate the ideas that we have, what you would find interesting, and that we would do that in the pressure cooking in the next coming years. And if you would like more info, of course, link up on Facebook or ResearchGate or Twitter or LinkedIn, and there's a lot to tell about publications and everything. So, but for now, I would thank you for your attention.